Alright, so good evening, everyone, and welcome back to this our second session of our week one's class. So let's have a quick recap of Saturday's class before we move on. We covered what data is, what data analysis is, and the two types of data: the quantitative, which we mentioned that is numeric and measurable, and we talked about qualitative data, which is categorical, like names or regions. We covered the 5 steps of the data analysis process: the ask, collect, clean, analyze, and communicate. And then we covered the difference between a workbook and a worksheet, where we mentioned that a workbook is the entire file and a worksheet is one tab inside it. And so if any of that feels unfamiliar, don't worry, it will click as we use it tonight. And the lesson notes is also going to be shared. Okay, I think I've shared it already. So you'll be able to refer back to that. So tonight is different in nature from Saturday. Saturday was concepts, tonight is interface and mechanics, right? So I'm going to walk you through Excel the way I had walked a new hire through it on their first day, right? So we are going to, like as usual, a complete walkthrough. So if you are on your system, I think I shared the data. Let me share it again. Like I deleted it. Let me share the data set again. If you're interested and you're close to your system, you can open the data sets and I've shared the data set again. Before I go any further, if you can't hear me, or if you can hear me actually, let's say if you can hear me, just indicate in the chat, or you can just send us a smiley or something. All right, so let's continue. If you'd like, preferably you should have the data set open in front of you. I just shared it again in the WhatsApp group. It's just to take a few seconds to launch. All right. We've discussed briefly what this data set contains, right? We talked about it having 100 and 300 entries in this particular sheet, sales data sheet, which is our main working sheet for the next 6 weeks. So let's get familiar with it. Everything we do from here forward happens on this particular tab. So along the top, we have the column labels A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth, which are the columns, right? Each column holds one category of our information, right? Maybe the date, a region, a product, and so on. Down the left side, by this side, we have 1, 2, 3. You know, those are the rows, right? So this runs all the way down to the very end of your sheet. So these are rows while these are columns. I think we've been able to go through what ribbons are and what ribbons we are going to be using in this particular data set. If you've opened it, you should be able to know some short navigation shortcuts, right? If you're able to know some navigation shortcuts, like if you hold on Control and then you click on, if your keyboard end in your keyboard, it will take you to the very last cell that contains data, right? Holding on Control and clicking on End will take you to the last cell that contains data. And if you hold on Control and click on Home, it will take you back. It brings you straight back to A1. The other thing is you can use Control plus the arrow keys, let's say for instance, click holding on Control and the down key will take you, let me zoom in a bit, will take you to the very end, the last cell where you have data, and holding on Control and the right key will take you to the last column and the last cell with data in the last column. So you can play along with this, play around with it, because it's very important when you want to do some things, when you need to highlight. So these 4 work shots work in any sheet, any file, forever. It will keep on working. So maybe by week 3, I think you'll be using them without thinking about it. That's the goal. For now, just watch me use them a few more times as we go, through our lesson tonight, and try them yourself during the class or after the class on your own copy of the file. Now, Mr. Steven was asking about freezing panes yesterday. That I was talking about the header where we have the name of each column, and we said by scrolling through, especially if you have numerous data, as soon as you scroll through, you'll not be able to see that header anymore. And you say this is not ideal, because if I go, maybe if I scroll to the side of my data, I don't know what the label for any of these columns are. Probably this might be product, but it might not be as clear for you to tell what the labels are, and you can't decide uh, confidently that this is what this particular column is for. So what you need to do, you would want to be seeing the header. You'll be if you can't see the header, you will lose track of which column is which, right? So that's actually a problem when you are working with numerous rows. So you can fix this by just freezing the top row. For instance, let's say I click on this cell A2, which is this particular cell right here, which is the first row of data, not the header itself. Then I go to this particular A2 that says TXN0001. Then you go to the ribbon. On the ribbon, you should have your view. There should be view tab in the ribbon here. I have view there. You click on it. If you click on view, you will be able to see under window, you'll be able to see freeze panes, right? Freeze panes. So once you click on the freeze panes, there's a drop down that will show. So now for it, you have 3 options. You can either click on freeze panes, freeze top row, and freeze first column. So the most common one, because that's what holds your header for data header, is going to freeze top row. We are saying the very top row of this sheet should be frozen. So if I click on this, right, now watch what happens if I try to scroll. You see that first row will not disappear. It's locked in place. No matter how far down I go, I can always see the first row. So when I scroll through like this, and maybe I'm trying to, okay, this is revenue column, this is unit price column. Again, the way you do it is you go to freeze panes under the view tab, and then there is what you call freeze panes. You click on it, you will see freeze top row. Now I have it frozen, so at the top it's saying on freeze panes, right? So that's how you freeze your row. So this is directly useful to you, and we are going to see it. So when you do this yourself, you'll be able to see how important, especially if you are looking at data that has thousands of rows, you know how important it is. And another thing about data is that this is not the only row you would want to freeze. Sometimes you might want to freeze a column as well. Say, for instance, you want to freeze the first column, meaning you want to always see the transaction ID. You see, when I do this, transaction ID disappears. So if I would like to always see the transaction ID as well as the column I am in, I would also choose freeze first column, so that when I do this, the transaction ID will be frozen, and I can always see which row I am in at the current uh, cell, right? So Chukwuemeka is in what? Row 60. So that's what happens. So let's unfreeze the panes and then continue with what we are doing. So one more quick fix. If you take a look at this, some columns are actually narrow. You can see text like this vegetable oil in the product column. You can see text getting cut off, like also in this product and even in customer, you have text. Mama Ngozi Super something is a bit cut off. So the fastest fix, you click on this small triangle at the top left side, right? Top left corner. There's this small triangle there. You click on it. This will select the entire sheet. Then once you click on it, you double click any column border. These are the column borders, these are the column borders, what separates one column from the other. You double click on any column border in this header row. So once I double click on this, you would see that the column width will be adjusted. It will auto-resize based on the cell that has the largest entry, so that if Unity Supermarket will fit in, Musa General Store and the rest will fit in customer. So once I double click on this, everything will fit in properly. All right, as you can see. So now this is much easier to read, and it took just some few clicks, right? Now let's look at what's actually inside this data set, and not actually as an Excel user clicking buttons, but as an analyst. I told you, you are not learning Excel, you are learning data analysis with Excel. So let's look at it as an analyst reading data. So I'm going to scroll through slowly, and I want you to watch and maybe tell me if you notice something. I don't know if it's clear if you're using system or your mobile phone. So we have the transaction ID. The way the date is set is that year comes before, obviously this is month, and then day. The customers, it doesn't look like individuals. These are stores, retail stores that probably bought goods from a wholesaler. So these are not individuals, these are retail stores. The state is not just one state, it's multiple states across the nation. We have Kano, Katsina, and the likes, right? But I have noticed something in the states. If you look at the spelling of some of the states, they are proper cases. Kano is in proper case, Katsina, Enugu, proper case, and then you have Kaduna all in upper, Kaduna all in capital letters rather. Enugu as well, all in upper, and some places you have proper while some upper. So this is an inconsistency that you would have to deal with later on, right? So products, there are a lot of products here with their sizes, maybe box and the rest, packs, sanitary pad. A lot of things are in the product column. We'll see more of it later. All right, so yeah, so by just looking at this, you can see that units sold, the column for units sold, which is column G, has some blank cells. Some cells are blank there, right? You have some blank cells. It means it's missing value, and which is actually one of the most common problems you deal with as an analyst. While entering the data you've been given, some values are missing. you get to decide, is it vital to your analysis, or what are you going to do about that missing value? Yeah, so let's look at, but is our dates accurate? Is there no discrepancies in these dates? We are going to look at, okay, look at something here. Look at the format. So some rows are showing day, a year, hyphen, month, hyphen, day, while this one is using slash. So there are mixed formats in the same column. None of this is actually by accident. I actually built these problems into the dataset deliberately, because every real data set you'll ever work with, from a client, from a job, from your own business, will have issues exactly like this. So spotting them is your first job as an analyst. Look at all these missing values we have here. These are also missing values. So spotting them is your first job as an analyst. So we are going to fix them in week 2. Tonight, you just need to understand that they are there. There are some mistakes or perceived mistakes in the data sets. That skill alone puts you ahead of most people who touch Excel to just maybe have some Excel skills. So you want to notice mistakes and how to fix it. This is one of the ways to actually notice whether you have problems with your data. So now let's say we would like to confirm how many transactions we have in this particular sales data set. So let's say Ctrl+End will take us to the last cell, which is K301, right? So since row 1 is the header, that's 300 transactions. So you can tell that since you have 300 entries, you have 300 transactions. All right, so as promised, we'll continue this with session B of week 1. So for the next part of our class, I'm going to teach you 5 formulas, right? These are not practice formulas. They are the exact formulas that real analysts use every day. After each one, I'll explain what it does and show you how to write it, and then you write it on your own in Excel. All right, but before we use even a single formula, let's deal with something that is common in imported data, which are numerical values stored as text. If you take a look at these units sold, if you look at the values you have there, you can see that there's this a green triangle right at the top left corner, right? And as well, this unit's price and revenue also has all those time triangle. This shows that this value has been stored as text. Right? When you click on this, you see these are numbers stored as text, and you can actually just convert them back to numbers. So each one can be converted back to number, right? So it's a very common issue with imported data. Now, to fix this, okay, so to fix this, what we are going to do is we can take each cell, try to fix it one after the other. So we're going to copy the whole column, right? Starting from the first entry in G2, and just you hold down on Shift and Shift and Control, and then you use the down arrow to take you right to the last entry. Now the reason why it's not going to the very last entry is because there are missing values in this particular column, so it won't take as much to get there. We'll be there soon. All right, so this is good practice. So it's Shift, Control, and then the down arrow key. And then you can still see that it's still there. And when you click on it, you can now convert the whole thing to number, right? You can now convert the whole thing to number. Sorry, okay, this one doesn't have any missing values. So we can simply convert the unit price also to number. Same can be done to the revenue, right? So it has a lot of missing as well. These are things we are going to fix later on. when we are doing data cleaning. Yeah, so you convert that one to number as well. So you now have three of your what's it called? Your columns that are supposed to be numerical. You have them as numbers now. So now let's take a look at something. Let's say I'm trying to look for the total revenue. Right. What I'll do is the way to do that is when you're looking for total, the formula for that is called sum, which adds up a range of number. We are talking about SUM. And then what you do with SUM is you give it the range. And we are trying to see total revenue. You know where the revenue column is. You know the column label. It's I. And the first entry for the revenue is on I2. So we are starting from I2. Then it's going to be a colon, right? And then I301. Now, don't worry about it. There are a lot of ways to do this. You might find that some of the ways I do things, there are other ways to do it, but this is the one of the ways, and actually, I think the easiest way to do it. I don't want to go into some of the other things we have. So, some once you do that, click on enter. It will give you the total revenue. As you can see, this is what we got, right? This is the result we got. Now, how much is this? Okay, this is 36 million. So that's the total. No, this particular number is the total revenue generated across all 300 transactions. And it was done in one formula in 1 second, right? So let's break down what was written. So if you click on the cell, you just use the formula on, and then you come to the formula bar. It will display the formula that we use on that particular cell, even if what you have there is the value. So let's take a look at the formula here. What happens is that the equality sign is what tells Excel that, okay, this is a formula, right? Before it's the way the syntax is. You start with an equality sign. This will tell Excel that, okay, anything that is going to follow is a formula, right? And the sum is a function in Excel that means add everything up. Now, this and the way the functions work is that you put what you are trying to work with, the cells you're trying to work with, or the exact instructions, uh, or we call that argument in Python, inside your the parentheses. So I2 to I301 is the range, which means from the first revenue value down to the last. Mind you, we are starting with I2 because the I1, the first row, is where the column, the name of the column is written. So it's not going to be included in our calculations. Now, the column between I2 and I301 means from I2 to I301, every cell in between. So you can try this and see, or some of you know these formulas, right? So the next formula is average. It's average. So let's get our average here on our cap revenue per transaction. On second thoughts, should we do it right here? I think we should do it here. So it's going to be average revenue per transaction. All right. So let's see what happens when you're trying to. So this is supposed to tell us the average revenue per transaction across the whole data set, right? So in other words, on a typical sale, how much revenue does the store make on any typical sale? So that number is meaningful. It's very meaningful, especially to a data analyst, because a manager can look at any individual transaction and immediately know whether it's above or below the typical transaction value. So let's take a look at this. Like I said, your formula starts with an equality sign. and then the function, and then you give it the range. So it's going to be the same range from I to the whole of the revenue, entries of revenue. From I2 to, why do I keep typing 1 as I301? All right, so this is basically the average revenue you have per transaction. Now, you can keep going with this. We can also take so this is how you use the formulas. If you still check the formula bar, you see that this particular row entry in cell has a different formula, while this one has a different formula. You can also, let's say we would like to see uh, highest single transaction, highest single transaction, right? Transaction, let's say the transaction revenue. I like using the revenue column because this is where you talk about the money made, right? So uh, the way you do that is, again, you start with the uh, equality sign, and then you give it a range. We are still working with the revenue column. So this is actually using the formula max, the function max will give you the highest single transaction. If you use a function, a max function on a column, it's going to check the highest number in that column and it will return it, right? What happened to my formula? Oh, I messed it up. All right, let's type it again. Oh, it's there. So it will return it. So as you can see, the highest single transaction we had, the revenue is around what, 2 million and 2 million. This 25,000. We are going to see how to make these figures look standard or look like currency, but not right now. So these are pretty much the way you type or you create formula. So let's have the opposite of the highest. Let's see the lowest single transaction revenue. So what would that be if the highest is max, which is equal to max? The lowest obviously is going to be equals to min, right? And you give it the range, right? So it's that straightforward. So this is the lowest. Wow. So the highest revenue transaction revenue was 2 million. Otherwise was just 1,200. That's interesting. So the lowest revenue transaction, a manager can look at this, would ask, maybe he might even ask, is this a data error, a genuine small sale, right? Because look at the highest, we have around 2 million, and the lowest is 1,200. You can ask, is this a small sale? You'll be able to track it, or is there a pattern to our smallest transaction? So these are questions that can be asked and be dealt with, right? So that's for the lowest. Now, the next thing we can look at is what we've done before, which will count the total number of transactions. Let's say we call this number of transactions, right? So what will happen is the way you do that is calling on the formula called count, right? So it will count the entries you have in that particular range you gave it. Now we'll see later on that range doesn't have to be a single column, but for now, this is what we are dealing with. So you have 266. Now, the result should be close to 300, but it will be less, we know, right? Because we've checked the revenue column and we've seen something. Obviously, as you can see, it's 266 because we have a lot of, let me not say a lot because this is very pretty much close to 300. We have some blank cells, right? Because we have where some of the units sold are missing. So if you have units sold missing, you are going to find that probably uh, your revenue is also missing, right? As you can see, you have some missing revenues. As you can see, you have revenue missing there, right, in the I column. Now, so the number of transactions you have would it's fine if it's less, than the total number, because it's clear that you have blank values. This is important because if count gives you this 266 instead of 300 that you know your total entry should be, that tells you that 3 transactions have missing revenue data. Now, this is a data quality flag that we would have, you know, that you have to deal with. So if you look at what we just did with these 5 columns, in 5 formulas, we've created a mini summary of this entire data set, right? We've seen the total revenue across all 300 transactions. We've seen the average revenue per transaction. And then we've seen the highest single transaction, the lowest single, and we've confirmed number of complete records, right? This is the number of complete records. When you talk about think about how many you have missing. It's around 30. I think it's 34. Yeah, 34. So this is a really analysis. That is exactly what an analyst will do. Albeit is going to be presented in a better way. It's exactly what an analyst would also produce uh, as a first pass. If you have a new data set, the first checkup you are doing in data set, this is fine. And we haven't even touched pivot tables and charts yet. Those are going to come later on. All right. With that being done and said, now I'm going to show you something else, which is how to sort your data. What's sorting? So sorting basically lets you reorder your data sets. So the most important information rises to the top, right? You have the most important information at the top. But before I sort, I want to make one important point. Always, uh, always work on a copy of your data when you are learning, never the original. But for tonight, I will show you how to sort and then undo it so our data goes back to its original order. So when you get your data ready, you don't work on this, especially when you're trying to make changes to the data itself. So you don't work, you make a copy of it and then you work on that particular copy. So let's say we are trying to sort by my favorite column, which is the revenue column, right? We are trying to sort by my favorite column, which is the revenue column. Say I want to find our highest revenue transactions. I want them at the top so that we see those that are the highest at the top. So you can just click anywhere in the data sets. Let's click on our I2, the first revenue. And then there's what you call in the ribbon, you have where you have the data tab in the ribbon. Look at it here, data tab. So you can find sort right there in the data tab. Look at it here. You have sort there, right? So once you see sort, you can click on the sort. When you've clicked on the sort, this is a dialog box that pops up when you click on sort. So you tell Excel what exactly are you trying to sort. So you are sorting by revenue, right? And then you are trying to see not the smallest to largest, but we are trying to see the largest to smallest. Once you have that, you just make 2 changes. You tell it what you're sorting by, and then the order you want it. Is it ascending or descending order? So this is what is descending. Once you click on OK, look at the data now. The highest revenue transactions are at the top, and our best transactions are immediately visible. As you can see, we checked which is the maximum, the highest single transaction. We said it's 2 million. As you can see, it's the very, very first transaction. And then the person, it was Lagos Mart that bought that. So yeah, 2 million. This is the highest item bought, and these are the highest transactions are at the top, while as you go down, it descends to the very lowest. So the last one should be our lowest transaction, right? If you look at sorry, if you look at okay, the blanks will be at the bottom. So if you look at the last one we had, apart from the missing values, is 1,200, just like we have 2 million as the highest. So let's undo our sorting and leave it the way it is. We did undo the sorting. So even though sort is non-destructive when you undo it, but in professional work, you never sort the original data. You sort a copy. We'll talk more about this in week 3. Now let me sort by region alphabetically, right? Where is our region? As you can see, this is the region alphabetically. So if you sort it alphabetically, you know that all Abuja transactions are together, all Kano transactions will be together, and so on. So it's still the data tab, sort, but this time you tell it you should sort by region, right? And it automatically to detect that the column is a text column, and it says A to Z, or order A to Z or Z to A, right? When you click on OK, as you can see, it will sort it in a way that Abuja comes first, Enugu, Ibadan, and so on and so forth. So this is the beginning of our grouping, organizing, which is basically organizing data so you can see patterns within each group. We should also Ctrl Z to undo what we just did. We will see that. So as you can see, in just some few seconds, we've reorganized the rows we have in this data. With that being said, I think we should stop here and we can continue next week. You wrote 5 real formulas, which are the sum, average, max, mean, count, and use them to summarize the 300 row data set. You sorted data 2 different ways to get some insights into the data, right? So we asked what our biggest transaction is, and we saw that it's the transaction made by someone, Aisha, and it was around 2 million naira. So this is data analysis. And next week, we'll take the same data set and we fix everything that's wrong with it. The missing values, the inconsistent regions, the wrong date formats. By the end of the week 2, this data set will be clean, consistent, and ready for serious analysis. So thank you for watching. We had 2 beginner sessions this week. You shouldn't worry about it. We're taking it gradually, and I'll see you next week.